So studio panel, my name is Dino Bonačić and I'll be your host today. And before we start talking about Tom Ford, which is our topic for today, I'll let my guests introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Joshua Graham. I'm the editorial assistant here at Show Studio.
Hi, I'm Sarah Faisal. I run a women's wear archive showroom in East London.
Hi, I'm Jawara Alleyne and I'm a designer.
Hi, I'm Lauren Wyper and I own Phoenix the Agency, a model and talent agency in central London.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for wonderful intros. We've got a very interesting bunch of people from very different perspectives today, which is exciting because we're talking about Tom Ford Spring Summer 24, which is a collection that was shown yesterday in Milan. But before we talk about any of the collections, any of your impressions, I will do a little bit of an intro on Tom Ford for kind of just for context to see where this collection comes in. So the brand Tom Ford was founded in 2005 by Tom Ford himself, with his partner Domenico De Sole, and they did it on the back of exiting Gucci after a very successful run, where Tom Ford was the creative director for 11 years. And the brand Tom Ford is often described as the first kind of true luxury brand of the 21st century, because when it launched with eyewear, with menswear, and with makeup. Which was quite like a unique launch in its time. And I feel like today as well, I don't think there's that many brands that can say they do the same. Women's were launched in 2010 with that iconic show with Beyonce and Julianne Moore walking in it. And it was this like tiny, tiny show with 100 people there. And that was kind of the massive cinematic boom of women's wear for Tom Ford. This show comes as the first show since Tom Ford has been sold, and Tom Ford himself is not the creative director anymore. Tom Ford was sold for $2.8 billion to Estée Lauder, the beauty magnate, and they've kind of sold it last year. They just confirmed the sale this year in April. And according to a lot of financial experts, I'm not one of them, but I have Googled and have searched several Forbes articles. And it's really interesting to hear that I think according to a lot of the financial experts, that was the 2.8 billion was quite a generous estimation because the brand hasn't been performing as well in the last few years. I think 2021 marked the profit year of 80 million after 2020 and 2019 being not profit years, so they kind of recorded losses, which I think is really interesting, because to think that even though you're not at your best in terms of finance, you still get sold for that much money, I think that also says something about the Tom Ford name and the image and what that means, and that's something that we're going to hopefully discuss today. Since it was announced that the brand is being sold, kind of Tom Ford was, let's say, phased out. He was given another season, and it was announced then this year that Peter Hawkings is going to take over as creative director. Peter Hawkings, for those who don't know, has been with the brand since its very beginning, and even before then, he was working for around 7 years with Tom Ford at Gucci as well, which I think is very palpable from the collection that was shown last night. Before we talk about the show itself, I really do want to hear from each and every one of you about your expectations from this show, whether you had any at all, and what were your kind of before, let's pretend that we didn't see the collection. What were the things that you were maybe looking forward to or expecting out of this show? Why don't you start, since you're sitting next to me, Josh?
I assumed it was going to go into a really sexy direction. I think Tom Ford, since his Gucci days, has always been about like heady hedonism and disco and sex. And looking at what designers are doing today, it feels culturally like we're kind of moving back into this sexy, alluring, sultry kind of era. So that's what I was expecting.
Okay.
I wasn't expecting like a complete overhaul of what Tom Ford is. I think he's created some really distinct codes. He's really perfected his tailoring for men and women. So yeah, I didn't expect like a completely new vision of Tom Ford.
No, I think I agree. I think I was expecting a little bit of a continuation of a legacy, especially from somebody who had kind of their background in menswear as well. I was interested to see how that was going to translate into women's wear. But yeah, I was heavy expecting a lot of Gucci references.
You got what you were expecting. You too, Jawara Alleyne, what was the...
Sorry to interrupt, go ahead.
No, don't go ahead, it's fine.
I mean, you obviously expect a level of safety. They worked together, across two companies for 2 decades.
Yeah.
That was definitely it. I thought there was... Sorry, am I talking about what I expected?
What you
or what
expected,
I thought?
maybe. I kind of wanted to take it back for a second before we go in.
Yeah, I thought there was going to be a level of safety with the show, and I think moving on to what we're going to move on to next, there's a few points that I have on what I saw, and I was like, oh, really? We only saw that, from Tom Ford's farewell collection, so yeah.
I had no expectations.
I was waiting for one person to say, I had absolutely no expectations.
These things could go one way, they could go another way. We think that we really know the desires and needs of a business, but quite often we don't. So I was just like, let's see. Let's see.
That's good. I think that's a good way of going into a collection. I think there's been a lot of debuts this year, like the Helmut Lang, like the Moschino, the first ever show without the Jeremy Scott, not first ever, but first in a very long time without Jeremy Scott, which feels like first ever. Let's talk about the impressions of the collection now. Let's start reverse, maybe. What was your first impressions when you saw the show? What was like emotion that it kind of made you feel?
I wasn't overwhelmed, but I wasn't underwhelmed either. I thought it was beautiful. I loved the short shorts. When I saw the velvet suit jacket, I was a bit like, oh, we've only just seen this, which is what I was referencing to before. I liked it. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, I wasn't mad at it. I was like, oh, Tom Ford, major.
Yeah.
Not mad. It looks great.
It did what it said on the tin.
Yeah.
Got it.
Exactly. I just think I think the third look was an immediate reference kind of thing as well. So by then I was like, okay. And specifically the look that they just showed, that kind of fringe look was so stunning that that stood out in my head, that even though there might not have been as many standout looks, because that was so beautiful to me, I was just kind of I was happy.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was fine. I think the Tom Ford brand, and thinking about it beyond his time at Gucci and YSL, has always been about luxury and exclusivity and this 1% market. So, I mean, I wasn't expecting a completely new proposition for what the brand has spent the last few decades really cultivating. And yeah, I think it's very fine. It's beautiful, it's well made, it does what it intended to do.
Yeah.
But I'm not, blown away or overly impressed about the direction that it's going in, because I don't really see it going in an interesting direction.
We're going to get to the direction in the future. Don't jump ahead, Josh, please. No, I'm joking. But I think I want to ask now, I think something, and anyone can answer, I don't want to put you through the kind of rules, but what are your thoughts on somebody who's such a big part of a brand? So he's been the menswear director for so many years. He's knows Tom Ford personally that long. In comparison to someone like Peter Do, who's maybe sees a Helmut Lang as an icon, or the same for other brands, when people enter like Jeremy Scott with Moschino, those are my current 3 references, or even Blue Marine, that is what's happening right now there. I think there's a lot of variations where people don't necessarily know the creative director, and you don't know them personally, which means that oftentimes you don't have that emotional connection to that person. You're not scared of offending him. My impression, that first impression, was that it almost was Peter Hawkings asking for approval from Tom Ford in a way, and kind of respecting all the things that he's done without throwing any of it away. What are your thoughts? Is it good that somebody who knows the brand so well is joining it, or is it maybe, would it be more exciting to see someone else reconfigure what Tom Ford is?
I think it's interesting when you look at maybe a Peter Do, because you said, he was a fan. So you're looking at a fan's interpretation of their icon's work. So you're probably going to see a lot of references as to the things that he particularly loved and the things that he's seen and he wanted to replicate. But having somebody who's kind of integral to maybe the organs of the body of Tom Ford, it's interesting. But yeah, like you said, you're not probably going to get a fresh take on it. You're going to get something that's just maybe ongoing, and it's going to be a bit more of like a seamless transition as opposed to like a shocking kind of reinterpretation.
Does Tom Ford need a shakeup? That's my question in that.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't think people would respond positively to that. I think they need like a continuation, a consolidation of what we've already seen, maybe a slight evolvement, but people want Tom Ford to be Tom Ford.
But then are people responding to Tom Ford? Like, since he found his eponymous brand, has it made waves? Has there been a real clientele there that is adamant about Tom Ford?
I think
really?
you see a lot of people going back. I don't think you see a lot of people going to new Tom Ford. I think we see people retreating back to Tom Ford Gucci.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe that's the smart thing for them to have done, is reference that again and maybe bring that back.
On that note, I want to ask, what was the apex of Tom Ford? What is like a reference that each of you have? Maybe if you have, maybe you kind of don't care. But since you are here, I'm expecting you to care a little bit. And just but like, what is that pinnacle of Tom Ford for you? And maybe to focus a little bit less on the Gucci side and more on Tom Ford as a brand. I would love to hear that.
Sexy, provocative, well-fitted.
Is there like a moment that you
powerhouse.
remember of Tom Ford from the past? Like,
I think two moments come to mind. The sequin jersey dress, that was kind of a reference to Jeffrey Bean and Beyonce and Tom Ford, or Jay-Z really into that. And Zendaya in that Izzy reference breastplate.
yeah,
Those are the two.
Yeah, definitely. Which is fairly recent. I feel like that was like a recent moment of Tom Ford's that he had. Anyone else, Jawara? You're a fashion designer. Has Tom Ford ever been on your like reference point?
Totally, because it's so clean and chic and beautiful and a representation of like elegance and class, but not necessarily of creativity, which is fine.
No, that's a really great point, actually. Yeah.
Which is fine. But for me, what I really kind of remember most importantly about Tom Ford is the risk of sex.
The what?
The risk.
The risk. Okay, got it.
The campaigns were very risque. And I think that is something that always set Tom Ford, the brand, apart. Outside of the clothes, actually, the clothes were very much like the clothes that we've seen, but the way that they were presented were in this way that actually made it so desirable and borderline controversial, but also sexist controversial. And I think that was missing. This sort of slight element of some sort of sexual risk.
Like a danger.
Yeah, the danger. I feel like
I'm wondering if that'll come through in the campaign.
Maybe, yeah. I think I wanted to add to that because actually, not only has Tom Ford changed creative director, they've actually changed a lot of their teams. So like their main kind of hero teams in terms of brand image, in terms of marketing and all of that has changed as well. So it will be interesting to see now with the kind of collections coming along and like the campaign dropping, whether it was like a video that maybe could have come before the show that would kind of give that taste beyond the catwalk. I totally agree, but it is something that will hopefully develop as time goes by with the new people there. I do want to mention when you talk about the imagery of Tom Ford, I mean, there's like even though it's a highly problematic topic and maybe one that we shouldn't talk about, but Terry Richardson, a highly problematic persona who's been cancelled over and over, was integral in creating early Tom Ford. Like all the campaigns of Tom Ford himself in it, in the nude, like slightly creepy, slightly like makes you uncomfortable, but because there's a sexual tension between the nude models and him, with the like imagery. I think there's like exactly like all the fragrances.
I was just going to say, when you were talking about iconic imagery, the fragrance images, that's exactly what comes to mind.
And that there is something about that you know, it's now, where does that fall? How do we, because you don't recreate it because that would be so boring. But what does that look like today? That to me would be an interesting one to see. On that note, I would love to ask, like, who do you think, what designer is holding the spot of what Tom Ford used to be? Because I think, to me, that's something that I'm exploring, because Tom Ford has kind of evolved since it began as a brand. And perhaps it doesn't need to offer the same kind of clientele that it did then. I feel like the Tom Ford client from what we saw last night feels a bit older than it did maybe at his Gucci era and all of that. kind of designers that came to my mind, and maybe you can disagree or agree, but people like Charlotte Knowles or Supriya Lele or even Blue Marine that I mentioned kind of have those like kind of sleek, sexy, in a modern way. So I want to hear like what are some of those designers, and maybe they, people that reference Tom Ford in their work.
I think Supriya Lele definitely came to mind amongst the younger generation who are carving out that lane of very sensual, sexy garments. Aaron Ash, I think, also comes to mind, and he does it in such a relevant and modern way, especially through styling.
And the tailoring as well.
Yeah. And I think it's really capturing that sex and provocation.
It's very interesting, I think, when someone like Peter, who's been with the brand since its inception, takes over, because you come in with a sense of what the brand's initial intention was, and you kind of inevitably design with that in mind. When it works is when you also add another layer of yourself and another layer of what you see, where you see the brand going, kind of. And yeah, I think it's very interesting to see like what kind of motives a designer that comes in, and not only where they're coming from, but also what are they trying to achieve out of being in that space.
Yeah, I think it was really fascinating when there was the images of Peter Hawkings that first came out when he was announced. I feel like we're safe to say that most people didn't know who he was, and his choice of presenting himself was a way that was very like similar to what Tom Ford looks like even down to the glasses and the thick frames, which I know we're kind of like, they're like quite a simple comparison, but Tom Ford's glasses were something that was distinctly his, and you would kind of like the same way, Karl Lagerfeld's like little like collar and the gloves. And in that sense, like when Peter Hawkings was announced, that first image that came out was the kind of the orangey kind of thick rimmed glasses and a suit, and it felt a bit, and at that point maybe I didn't have that many expectations, because I was like, clearly this is somebody who has kind of learned from Tom Ford, down to the pose that felt very like like masculine, particular. Sorry?
Picked up all the codes.
Exactly, yeah.
This made me skeptical, I will say.
Yeah.
When they dropped this, it made me skeptical.
Very Succession.
The shiny shoe,
It's creepy. It's a
The
little
thing
creepy.
is like that'll be
single white female.
Yeah, it's single white female.
whether it's contrived or not, it's subconsciously ingrained in who he is as a being, not even just a creative director. That was his first job. That's 25 years. Like, of course, that's who you are.
No, I'm not. I agree with you. There's something to say, like, that he spent more time working on this brand than not.
Yeah.
Like, in his life, probably.
He is it.
Like, so in a way, he is a Tom Ford. But it was just a matter of going to that expectations and, like, moving on from where we are to where we want to be.
It might say a lot for what he did, where there's only subtle differences between the two.
Yeah, totally. Why don't we dig into the collection now? I feel like we've talked around it and about it. So I want to hear like everyone's highlights first. Like, what were the pieces, the looks, maybe the ideas that you really loved that felt interesting to you personally?
I really loved the slinky dresses, the long ones. There was a backless one that I really liked. I felt that it could have been a little bit sexier, going back to what Josh said before. I thought it really steered clear of safety. But those were the ones that kind of pointed out.
I think a lot of the images do those dresses a little dirty because they are really low plunging, and you don't really see that when they turn around.
Yeah.
So
fair enough.
but they were giving a little bit kind of YSL to me.
I think a lot of the stuff, like down to the safari pockets on a few of the jackets, it felt very not only Tom Ford era YSL, but actually Anthony Vaccarella's YSL of the like
I've
broader
seen
shoulder.
this dress like in black.
Perhaps styled a bit more sexy, a bit more interesting at YSL, in my opinion. Other highlights accessories. Let's talk about accessories. I feel like that's a must discussion. The belts that were direct reference to
literal
Gucci.
direct. Like I think it's 1996.
But they also felt very, like the large one, they felt very referential of the recent Bottega belts, like with the hook and the leather woven through. So I felt like there was.
Then I guess you could
modern.
say Bottega referenced them.
Totally.
So.
No, that is you have a kind of a carte blanche when you work at a house like Tom Ford to like bring back anything. What do we think of actually focusing more on the Gucci years rather than the Tom Ford years? What is that? Is that okay? Are we like Diet Prada-ing it, or are we not? Is it like he allowed to do it?
He was also a part of Tom Ford Gucci. He like joined in like 1998, which was, and that's a lot of his life basically spent there. So I'm not surprised to see those references.
I can't look at this Tom Ford collection without immediately thinking about Corinne Reitfeld and like the work she did with Gucci, and that silhouette with the unbuttoned shirt, as risque as you can make it, and the tight like pencil skirts,
heavy belts. Yeah.
It's that like sexy
Office
French
chic,
chic nonchalance that I really was attracted by with this collection.
The thing was, like, I feel like something that was distinctly different, that they were very shiny fabrics. To me personally, it felt very un-French, and I felt like it felt quite fitting in Italy in a way.
I thought it was very interesting that it was chosen to be in Milan from the get-go.
Because the brand is based in the UK, like the kind of the Atelier,
Well, yeah, he was based in the UK, and then obviously Tom Ford was based in the US, so they could have shown anywhere.
I think the one thing that Peter Hawkings said to everyone in every show, like every show review mentioned, and I saw Susie Menkes going backstage, that he felt that the men's and the women's felt very disjointed, and he wanted, because they were kind of, Tom was in LA, he was in the UK, and they felt very like working from different places affected the collections, and he really wanted to do kind of bring them together with this collection. Do we feel like that was achieved?
In terms of the men's and women's wear?
Do we care that it's achieved?
No, I don't think
does men's and women need to look...
I think the Tom Ford woman and the Tom Ford man aren't the same client. So...
Do they hang out?
No.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
I don't, that girl is not with that guy. So.
They're not even friends.
They're not even friends. Okay, we love that.
Actually competing.
Yeah, they're not getting into the same party.
They hate each other. They'll see each other like walking past each other and like eye each other down. That's a good point.
I die.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, there were obviously those direct references to the Gwyneth Paltrow tuxedo. Which I just wondered, like, what has Peter done to actually move it on? Because actually, Alessandro Michele showed it in one of his collections, literally the identical with the blue shirt, how Gwyneth wore it. In this collection, that velvet tuxedo with the lining, with the rimming that was in a slightly different fabric, it came in this dark aquamarine and a really, really deep purple in this collection. So, but beyond the actual color difference, it didn't really feel like the cut has moved on. At least Michele showed it on like a slightly more masculine figure, that kind of reminiscent of what Gwyneth Paltrow used to look like back then. And she actually wore it to one of the shows as well, the Cosmogony show, I think it was in LA. So it felt very, is it too soon? Is it too soon to reference that again?
I think because it was so reference heavy, it's just like completely reducing how iconic it was to begin with, and kind of the reverence for like those 96 white dresses with the belt and
like if
redoing them
cut out.
If you had focused on that as being the main
I think that would have been
throwback, it would have stood out more.
It was like the like croc embossed leathers. It was the velvet suits. It was
even that bodysuit is like a direct reference from I think like 2002 or 2003. So it's like just a lot.
Yeah, mock croc. I was a bit baffled by the amount of it. It just felt, does anybody feel comfortable wearing a full mock croc? Not that you have to be comfortable. I guess Tom Ford person doesn't want to be comfortable. But I do think that obviously like that, there's that Rihanna dress that she wore, the black dress that she wore to the Met Gala, I think. That was like basically cut out pieces of actual crocodile, and they were sewn in like piece by piece of what I watched Tom Ford talk about it, and it was like this like incredible figure of her body. Here it was just like mock croc which is great. We stan it, like kind of not killing crocodiles. Well, let's see. But you know, we don't like exotic lizards and stuff like that. But it did feel like what is there to it? I do want to mention for a second. Sorry, go ahead. You wanted to say something?
Well, it feels like a lot. It doesn't feel like chic and modern, which I think is the direction
there are a lot
want to
of
be going
looks.
in, right? There was a lot of looks, there was a lot of idea, there was a lot of texture, there was a lot of, which I guess works in Milan.
I
But
wasn't sure about the short shorts. They were just kind of a bit out there for me.
I thought. You weren't sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wasn't like excited by them, but I just thought, I'm not sure. They're slightly off piece for me.
Okay. I mean, for me, that gold look, if we're talking about the Lolos, which I want to ask you, there was something about it that literally looked like 4 rows of kind of trimming that somebody bought from a shop, from
Very
a CSM
showgirl.
student fabric shop, and literally just wrapped it around a model. There was something about these things that felt overwrought that maybe to me needs to be
make it a little
simplified.
low rise, show a little hip. Like there were little like tailoring
things that
pause, maybe.
then I think it goes back to like the team that Tom Ford really worked with, and these really close collaborators. Like in Gucci, it was Karine and it was Mario Testino. And I want to kind of know the collaborative process that went behind what Peter did with this and who he has kind of.
I think Marie Shea, who's the stylist who has styled Tom Ford's shows before, I'm pretty sure that she's kind of continuing to work on it, to my knowledge. But I agree. I think it would be interesting to see that moved on and kind of, because it's not just about design at the end of the day, it's about how you'll put the look together and all of that.
Especially with these clothes, because I think they're very...
A lot of separates.
Separate. They're made to be styled. They're not...
Yeah. It was very like monotone in a way that like single colored looks, everything kind of matched, which to me also doesn't feel particularly modern when it's like so embellished. I feel like tonal dressing is something that was maybe cool a couple of seasons ago, and like a lot of the big shows did it. I don't know if like this satin particularly feels like, wearable or sexy or any of the things that I want out of like a suit.
I don't even know if this customer today wants to dress like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like if the Tom Ford that used to wear this stuff like 10 years ago, if they're still buying that stuff. I mean, to me, this is like an upper echelon older woman in her 60s who's just discovered Ozempic and really like wants to show off, like fully Botox.
It's Lisa Rinna.
It's Lisa. Oh, you said that, not me. No, but yeah, it is that. It's like somebody in their like older age who's like trying to be sexy and grasping onto their youth. That to me, a bit like some of these pieces show up. Personally, the best things, and again, a few of you mentioned it, it's the cool dresses, like the crochet dresses, the long stuff. Like there's that one, the black one, with chevron stripes, with kind of nipple out, really feels like cool. Like the fabrication, the textile feels rich. It doesn't feel overly designed. Even these like kind of stringy dresses.
I wish these got their moment a little bit more.
Yeah. I wish that was more explored as a fabrication.
This was like kind of sad to me because it's so beautiful, even in just like the construction of it, that it was just lost amongst all these other references. And it's like you said, the short shorts and this, if you showed me those two separately, I wouldn't think they were the same collection.
That's exactly. You've hit the nail on the head.
Like they maybe shouldn't have been, but yeah.
I feel like the intention with that is just like selling this
Everything.
whole wardrobe and like giving as much option as possible rather than really pinpointing what
offer is.
Peter's Tom Ford is going to be and the direction he wants to go in.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I read somewhere that Dona Luna, who was obviously one of Warhol's muses, was overall inspiration, and I can see it, but I can't see it in the collection overall. Like there are certain pieces that you can. I think the slinky dresses being one, and that movement and that sort of sleekness, but it wasn't an overall inspiration to me.
That's interesting. That's like a really fascinating, really relevant, really, I think, beautiful reference that, does get lost in in the sauce.
I do feel like also let's talk about the very obvious thing. Like the casting was not very inclusive in any way, which I think, again, seeing something as old school as Tom Ford in a context of different bodies would, for me at least, be more interesting. Like, because if you're showing these shorts, why not show it on a body that doesn't look like this skinny person? I mean, let's not even talk about menswear, which is like literally gone into the Celine, Hedi Slimane extremes of a skinny, like bones poking out of the open shirt. Even just seeing, like the muscle Marys that used to once be on the Gucci Gucci catwalks, like do it. Like, why not? It would be interesting and kind of move the conversation on a bit. I think there was something that you said at the beginning. I think the more we look at it, the more there's an obvious lack of risk and very kind of safe-oriented creative expression that isn't particularly creative at this moment. I want to talk about bags, actually. I think Tom Ford bags are something, we always talk about the it bag that a brand has that kind of helps them sell, because not everyone's going to buy the suit jacket that probably costs the same amount as a bag, but maybe they will invest in that handbag that will be part of their life for a long time, and it'll be the intro to the brand. Tom Ford never really had that it bag. There was that bag that Andy Sachs wore in Devil Wears Prada, which I'm pretty sure is when she has a makeover, and it's her, like, it's the loop bag, and it's like this piece of leather with a hole in it. But that is like the kind of virtually the closest that Tom Ford's been to like an it bag that's recognizable. Did we think that the square piece, the kind of the classic bags that he's shown, do they have potential?
I don't think Tom Ford and think bag.
Okay.
So I don't think
that's an opportunity, or no, not particularly.
I'm kind of like you can stay in your lane. That's fine. Okay. We have enough of them. I'm like, there's a lot of bags out there, and I'm not gonna like start looking to Tom Ford to like.
No, definitely.
I feel like if you haven't been doing it, you don't need to force it.
But then there were a lot of looks with handbags. Did we like the shape? Are we into it? Did it feel like particularly interesting?
Not very, no.
I didn't even think about the bags.
Yeah,
like
you didn't even notice that.
I didn't even notice the bags. To be really frank.
No, that says something in itself.
The whole thing just misses some sense of like forward-facing.
Yeah.
Like, it's all just too nostalgic.
It's nostalgic,
kind of, which nostalgia is fine if you're bringing me somewhere with this nostalgia, but the bags, like all of it just feels like it's just missing that element that actually makes it, I will say, desirable.
Yeah, and I think there's something about if we go to a Prada show, which will have, that's a constructed show of a specific theme that's then applied to the whole looks. And there's like the one shoe shape for the season, the one bag shape for the season, the detail of the season, like the flowers a few seasons ago, or the print, whatever. It's how that, like, I think the mathematics and the physics of that collection are very, basically worked out already. Something like this, I feel like, if you just showed me these images, I wouldn't know what year it is, which is, again, maybe a good thing, bad thing, I'm not the one to say, but I wouldn't necessarily know that it's 2023, 2017, or 2012. It could be any of those. Is that good? Is that bad?
I think there's varying degrees of that. I think the whole thing is a bit dissected and a bit all over the place. It doesn't have a wholeness to it. So.
There is not a topic, like there's not like a theme to the collection, it seems.
I don't think this is timeless at all. Like,
You don't think it's timeless?
No, I think
it's as timeless as the collections it referenced.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you want to buy the new version of the dress from 2002, you can buy it now because you can't find it then.
I think we need to think about why these original references, these original designs were so captivating to begin with. Because if we take them out of context and present them in 2023 in a completely different society, in a completely different way of thinking and engaging with everyone, it looks outdated, which is what I think this is.
There's not much design to it, if we're honest, right? Like, so many looks are very like, okay, let's use this fabrication in this silhouette. It almost feels like there was a line sheet of like silhouettes that were designed. There was a bunch of materials, and then it was like, okay, let's do this and this. Let's do this and this. I mean, there was this blue look that if we go one back, That feels quite Bottega almost. Like if you strip it down, this like vest silhouette with this kind of very structured mock croc skirt, it feels quite modern. It feels like, you know, if it was on a Daniel Lee catwalk restyled in a different way.
I think that's the thing. The styling is what I think is the detriment of a lot of this collection.
The shoes.
Because there are, I think the shoes, the strappy sandal. Are we? Okay, hot take. Is it the era of the strappy sandal again?
Oh no.
No.
Ankle heeled gladiator sandal.
No, but that's
When
another,
was that the last time? I'm trying to think.
2014.
Right. Maybe it should stay there.
But I think
Too
that's
soon.
like a loss, like another iconic campaign for me, or like a lot of iconic campaigns, especially like the Tom Ford ones, and going back to Gucci, were a lot of the shoes. Like the heels, they were sexy, they were cool, they were innovative, and then to go from that to this is just yeah.
I feel like we started out the collection with people being like, yeah, it's cool, it's fine. And now that we've dug into it,
Well, it's like,
feels
if you're
very,
gonna present something, I feel like you should hone in on the finer details as well.
But I think
It also might just be the angle that we're looking at this, where the shoes are looking right at me right now.
Well, I mean,
but
they were meant to know that everyone's going to see the collection from this point of view, so it's fair enough.
But I think the direction our conversation has gone in wouldn't be too different, I think, if we were talking about Tom Ford's last collection for the brand, or even his like 5th collection before he left the brand. I think that's really the problem I've had with his own brand is I just don't find it modern. I don't find it's fashion that's speaking to such a particular clientele.
Yeah, and I think it's also interesting that that's probably why Tom Ford exited when he did, because I think maybe he felt like there's not much more to say, or people around him felt like there's not much more to say, or just he got like $1 billion, which he did, apparently, because he did own the majority stake, and out of the whole sales after tax, he got $1.1 billion. So, you know, that's a good reason to exit a brand and maybe like start your own thing or whatever. I'm just going to wrap up because I feel like we're kind of I know there's more to say. Josh, why didn't you? I feel like you really wanted to say something and I stopped you, so go ahead.
No.
Okay. We've got kind of like a few more minutes. What is the direction that we hope and that we wish that Peter Hawkings takes? Let's say he doesn't exit this brand because we don't want to get anyone fired. We believe that everyone can make it work, like Tim Gunn. And what are we hoping for Peter Hawkings does next season?
A bit less safe, a bit more provocative, slightly more authentic to him, so we get a bit of a voice of who he is as a person. I'd be excited to see that.
Jawara?
I am hoping for very much the same, but maybe it's even less him. But like, what do the interns think? Like, what?
Love that. Yeah.
There's something to say about like who gets to have a voice, and I think if you're not the person that has that future-facing idea, then where do you get it from? And I think that's what makes a creative director a good creative director.
Amazing. It's about listening to people around you, not just being that figure, which I think Tom Ford oftentimes was, like in his first ever show when he, like Gucci show where he was the creative director, he was told not to walk out at the end of the catwalk, and he still did it because it's his like autonomy. So I think that's a very modern way of thinking. Yeah, like listen to other people around you. Love that. Sarah?
I think I hope he picks one thing for the next collection.
Focus.
I hope there's just focus and that we can see something that just like really stands out. And I think if you pick one thing and really put all of your effort into it, I hope that's what I really hope to see.
Amazing. Josh?
I want him to take some risks. I want, whether it ends up being good or bad, as long as he really believes in it, then do it. I don't like safe. I think I'm tired of safe.
Yeah. Well, we can all agree on that. I feel like that's a good note to finish. I really hope he does listen to each and every one. And I can't wait that intern that is going to have their look on the catwalk next season. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Thank you.